to A Gem of a Secret podcast. My name is Donatella My Secrets.
And my name is Coco Gem Holiday.
How you doing tonight, Coco?
Tonight I'm actually doing, I think is a good term. I don't know. So this is brought to you by BetterHelp. No, I'm just kidding.
If only.
If only.
Yeah, I am doing pretty well myself.
Yeah. So recently in our lives, we have a jungle on our patio. And not our patio, our front lawn.
Yeah.
And it's like in our backyard also is just like an absolute mess right now.
Well, yeah, the tree collapsed in it.
I know, from the snowstorm.
Mm-hmm.
And like now I'm worried that like wild animals are going to get in and kill us.
Oh, there was a raccoon that was walking around near the fire pit this morning, and I waved at it.
Did it
wasn't
wave back?
No, it wasn't as friendly to see me. I like knocked on the window and I waved at it, and then it just like looked at me and then walked out. And me being the crazy animal person that I am, I had some cereal that I was gonna throw out to it.
Of course.
And it ran off when it heard the door open.
Oh.
So.
As it should. You're scary.
I was just trying to make a friend. None of these wild animals want to be friends with me.
Because this isn't Snow White, honey. Like, you're not going to sing to them and they're not going to make you clothes. My goodness. Oh, Don, I forgot to ask, what are you wearing this evening?
I am dressed up as Angelina Jolie's left leg. Do you remember that time when she had that dress?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And it was just her left leg. That's what I'm sporting tonight.
Party. So I am dressed like Jessie from Little Mix, but I'm actually dressed in her outfit that she got ripped on the red carpet runway. I'm in that dress specifically. I did break into her house. I did steal it. I am now wearing it.
And this is all revenge because she's recording on her own.
It is revenge because she's recording on her own. I was actually, just as a side note, I was listening to her, like one of those YouTube things of 9 minutes with this person, right?
Yeah.
And I was listening to that today, and they said she talked about every time the words best friends came up or things like that or good friends, she never mentioned the group as her best friends.
Really?
Yeah, she always mentioned other girls as her best friends and stuff like that, which I always thought was worried. And she didn't she didn't say anything negative about them at all.
Mm-hmm.
She just never really referred to them. And of course the question's what do you think you'll miss about being in a band? And she said, or what thing will you not miss?
Mm-hmm.
And she basically said, which is something I thought about her, because she was the one who was a little bit bigger than the other ones. And even when she's because she's on a fitness journey right now, she just has a bigger frame because her body is stacked right now. She almost has a six pack and she just has a bigger frame.
Yeah.
And her hair's big too, and it's curly.
Yeah.
And she basically was talking about how no matter their success level, she was always being compared to the other girls. And I thought that made a lot of sense, being in a group for 9 years. Mm-hmm. You probably always would feel like you're being put against each other, even though you're friends.
Yeah.
And then she did say that her goal in life now, which is kind of funny to me, and she goes, because they were the first girl group to win a Brit Award. Mm-hmm. She said, I want to win a Brit Award by myself, and I would like to be able to perform at the Brit Awards by myself, is what she said her new goals are. And I think that that's admirable. And she said she did talk a lot about mental health, and she said being a part of the group was doing a number on her mental health. And, because she just, had to constantly keep competing. But, yeah, that's kind of all she said about it in that interview. She talked about...
They seemed so close
with
all the videos that, even the, behind the scenes of their tours and stuff. They always seemed so close, but...
I think that they probably were close. Mm-hmm. But when you're around a person because they actually said, what is your day like now? And she said, I get to sleep more. That's basically what she said. Because I bet they did have to wake up.
It was work,
Yeah, it was work. 24 hours.
Yeah, they were colleagues, Mm-hmm.
And so that's just so the only reason we're talking about that for so long, listeners, is because me and Donna love Little Mix. They are absolutely fantastic, and their music is solid.
Yeah, for the life of us, we couldn't really understand why they weren't having any hits in the U.S. when we first started listening to them, and it's been cool to see them reach some level of success and become more popular. I think that they're probably I think one of the most talented girl groups ever, and Yeah,
Yeah, actually, and
I
I
love
mean,
Perry Edwards.
the thing is, like, my favorite girl group obviously will still be Destiny's Child for all time.
Yeah,
But I think Little Mix actually probably is getting close to beating their record about number one hits.
yeah,
But I don't know how it works in the sense of a grouping overseas.
yeah. I don't either.
But they've been together for 9 years, which is a lot longer than Destiny's Child was together.
Yeah,
Not a lot, I think probably around the same time. But the thing is, they have their dancing ability. Like, actually,
mm-hmm.
Jessie brought this up. She's like, I was a dancer.
Yeah.
She's like, I fell into singing, and I was like, that's crazy because her
Ah,
voice is kind of better than Leanne's, and like,
yeah,
and I just was like, wow. I was like, you fell into that, and you have a dang good voice. Like,
yeah. She
so
does. She has a nice alto.
she does have a really nice alto,
Mm-hmm.
smooth. Also, she got some big eyes.
Yeah, she does. She has a very like round head too. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so everybody's like, really? They're going to talk about Lil Mix for 5 minutes? Yes, we did. They're great.
They are.
But moving on into the content of our episode, we're actually going to be talking about generations.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about Gen Y, Gen Z, the boomers, Gen Xers, all of it. All of it.
Zoomers.
Yeah. Zoomers is the same as Gen Z?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And actually, and here's the thing, listeners, we know that, like, generations actually are not real per se,
Yeah.
but people did grow up with like the easiest one is like lexicon. Like, they grew up with different technologies. They grew up like with tragedies like with 9/11 or something like that. And so these experiences shaped people. This next generation growing up, especially I would say probably the middle school age, with whatever they're going to be called, they obviously had to experience COVID at this level.
Yeah.
And that will probably shape their experiences. And they will also have a grown up life after COVID, obviously, which everything will probably be different.
Yeah.
So it's something to think about in that capacity, too. But I'm a millennial.
Yeah.
Hi.
I'm also a millennial. And after Coco just kind of said that about tragedies and these different events shaping us, one of my favorite millennial quotes is actually from American Horror Story Coven by Madison Montgomery. And it is this: I am a millennial, Generation Y, born between the birth of AIDS and 9/11, give or take. They call us the global generation. We're known for our entitlement and narcissism. Some say it's because we're the first generation where every kid gets a trophy just for showing up. Others think it's because social media allows us to post whenever we fart or have a sandwich for all the world to see. But it seems that our one defining trait is a numbness to the world, an indifference to suffering.
I think that that's probably true. So I'd like to think about a lot of different tragedies that were happening in the world. So back in our parents' age, so like at the boomer generation even too, like when a tragedy would happen, not national tragedy like 9/11, but when a tragedy would happen like John Benet Ramsey or something like that. Those things really affected people and hurt people on a really like grand scale. And people felt that emotional hurt nationwide. And I don't feel like millennials act that way. Like individuals, sure, but as a generation, I feel like millennials are a little bit indifferent to suffering.
I think we are in like mass shootings. That's one thing that it's like it's been so common for it to happen that it's like, it becomes a point where you're like numb to it, because you're so used to it happening, and that's scary.
And I think it did have a lot to do with, I know people are going to hit me for saying this, but I think it had a lot to do with the fact that our video games were violent. Our TV was getting a little bit more violent when I was younger.
Columbine,
definitely. That's actually what I was thinking about. Columbine, which they tried to blame like Grand Theft Auto on that. Grand Theft Auto, the video game. And I will admit, Grand Theft Auto was really aggressive and it was horrible. And there was a bunch of games when I was younger that were all about violence. And it is true. Like, I grew up in the generation, so I'm a little bit older than Donna. And I grew up, so I knew of the Atari, but my first system was a Nintendo, like a regular Nintendo. And, Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt with a gun and things like that. And I do think that those things actually did numb us a bit to violence, because when it's on TV, you feel so detached from it.
Yeah.
And don't think it can happen to you.
Well, it was, it was violent video games, violent movies and TV. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, my parents didn't really censor me so much from like violence because my first reaction to it, I was like a very scared kid, and I was like really like when I saw like it was like some war movie that my dad was watching, and I walked in a moment when there's like a hostage and then like a soldier shoots the hostage, and it was the first time I really like as a kid experienced violence like that. And I remember my dad sitting me down and being like, hey, it's all fake, it's a movie, like you can watch this and stuff, and like basically explained to me that it's all props and it's all fake. So from then on, like I started watching movies like Sleepy Hollow and like Jaws and different stuff
Wow.
like that. So I kind of got like early on exposed to like ultra violence.
Yeah, actually, that kind of, now when you're talking about it, that happened to me. Like, so Child's Play,
Mm-hmm.
um, when that came out, I was so terrified. I had nightmares about Chucky from literally just movie posters. I
Mm-hmm.
never saw the movie, but I had nightmares about that doll coming to life, like
Yeah.
aggressive nightmares about the doll killing me. And I was too terrified to watch Nightmare Before Christmas
Mm-hmm.
because Jack Skellington looked really horrifying as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was young, so I was young enough to where I remember the commercials for Nightmare Before Christmas,
Yeah.
and it was. I remember there's just the scene where the kid like takes out like the severed heads from like underneath the bed or something like
Uh-huh.
that as gifts or whatever, and I thought that was like horrifying.
Yeah.
And also the fact that he had no eyes was
Yeah.
also really horrifying. So I remember those moments. So I do remember there was a point when I was a kid that I was scared of things at that
Mm-hmm.
level, but it does slowly start sinking
It
away.
does because of the things that you view, the
Hmm.
things that you consume. And honestly, like I actually kind of appreciate my parents for because they did it. I was going to see it no matter what. We live
Hmm.
in a world where that's, it's promoted.
Hmm.
So kind of like the desensitivity to it. I think that, violence is definitely favored over things like nudity, which I don't think all the time need to be censored if it's not done in a sexual way. But yeah,
Actually, I have a question for you,
yeah.
just as a side note, and I think we should leave this in too.
Hmm.
So I saw online today, somebody said, "I want to be able to fully live out my kink fantasy of pride, and if you feel like that's uncomfortable for you, then you really shouldn't be bringing your children to pride." And I really thought about that a lot today. And the kink they were talking about is more so like, leather and harnesses and
Yeah.
like, a dom walking their sub down the street and like with a leash or something like that, or a pup
Yeah.
mask and some of those things. And like, they did say like flogging in public and things like that. And, um, I remember somebody had wrote in the comments, they're like, I'm into all of those things that you mentioned,
Yeah.
but I would not be comfortable with a child watching me getting spanked by some daddy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I think when it comes to that, I think there are certain events sure that should be family friendly for Pride, but
yeah.
like just certain events because I was looking out at like old pictures of Pride
Hmm.
from before we were born, definitely.
Sure.
And or around the time that we were born. And it was like kind of at the center of like the AIDS crisis, and there were, it wasn't families that were walking, like there were like all of like the leather ladala beans. By the way, that means lesbians. All of
God.
them, and like there was like, there was kink out in the open,
Hmm.
and I feel like at this point it's become such a part of it that yeah, it should be a place where people can express that. So I think that there needs to be certain events where families are like welcome. I don't even know if that means like doing like an alternate parade or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that people who bring their kids into those spaces need to be very aware,
Right.
of like what they might see, and it's the parents' job. And I don't necessarily agree that kids should be brought to spaces where people are doing that because that's a lot to explain to a kid unless you're ready to
Right.
have that conversation.
Well, I also
Which,
feel like pride. So somebody said this. They said stop trying to police pride in that other way too,
yeah,
because you like a lot of people work really, like people forget this, like it's really hard for queer couples to have kids.
Yeah.
And they want to bring their family in a very open, accepting space to Pride because they know they won't be judged.
Yeah.
And like, so somebody was like, you can't tell people not to bring their families to Pride. Like, and I was like, I agree with that too.
Yeah.
I agree
Well,
with that
I mean,
too.
but that's, I wasn't necessarily saying that. I was saying like they can bring their families to Pride just at events where it's family friendly.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that logic. I was just, I guess for me, there are now festivals that really go in hard on certain things that might be unokay for kids to see, like the Folsom Street Fair, things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Like, so kind of like your answer is like they did make other festivals and parades for some of those things. I guess I don't know this. So I agree with nudity in the sense of where we should turn nudity away from being inherently sexual.
Sexual. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, I know this was a little bit of an off-topic thing here because it came up today, and I was just like, oh, that's an
Yeah.
interesting discussion. But it's also kind of an interesting discussion because it gets back to the generational stuff with millennials and Zoomers when it
Yeah.
comes to what they expect and what they see at Pride. So, because Zoomers did grow up going to Pride
Yeah.
when it was a little bit more accepting,
Yeah.
and what they saw at Pride and how they act at Pride is a little bit different.
Yeah, well, I think that as a generation in general, one of their defining traits is kind of like a fearlessness, where we're numb. I think Gen Z has a fearlessness to them that we don't have because we are so numb in a lot of ways.
That's very
I
true.
think they're very bold. They're a really bold generation, and I think that even in our like little group that we're in, in our friend group, it's pretty clear to see that like those kids have some chutzpah, I don't know if I can say that. But they have some gusto. I don't know. I sound so old. Fuck. But yeah, no, I just think that's something that I notice about them.
Before we get too far into this conversation, Donna, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, Coco, I will let you know after this brief commercial break. Do you wear t-shirts? Do you wear a face mask?
I sure as hell hope so.
Do you put on your silly little t-shirt and your silly little face mask and wish you had something a little more out there?
Yes.
Even something, dare I say, matching?
Girl, yes, duh.
Then it looks like HunterDrips.com is exactly what you need. At HunterDrips.com, socially relevant merch and apparel is up for sale. That's never for profit. 50 to 100% of every purchase is donated.
I hear they carry matching shirts and masks with designs that say cute little slogans like defund the police, Black Lives Matter, and it goes over your nose. And even shirts and hats with your own pronouns on them. You know, things that are important.
Oh, so you mean important. And almost all of it is donated?
Yes, donated. And guess what?
What? It's size inclusive too?
Yes, up to 5XL. Why just make clothes for skinny people? It's all made by Queer Artist Girl. The creator of HunterDrips.com is trans, fat, lesbian, and the site also includes merch from other queer artists, including gay Portland rapper Chono.
Listeners, head on over to HunterDrips.com and use the code SECRET for 15% off your purchase today.
That's SECRET for 15% off your purchase at HunterDrips.com.
It's a podcast with Coco and Donatella podcast. Tune into what they tell you podcast with Coco and Donatella podcast.
Well, Coco, it is a full moon, so I'm feeling a bit of lunacy. Fun fact. According to the podcast Lore, which is a great podcast, check it out. The reason why they say lunatic is because people act, or known to act, crazy on a full moon.
Lunatic.
So, lunatic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People do act crazy on full moons.
They do.
I don't know why, but they do.
Speaking of crazy, Gen Z,
Gen
what
Z.
are your thoughts?
So those Zoomers. Here's the thing about Zoomers. So Zoomers use technology to create difference in the world when millennials thought they were using technology to make difference in the world.
Yeah.
So millennials are screaming on Facebook because Facebook is very much a millennial platform. When Zoomers actually use TikTok, like Zoomers use TikTok to buy all those seats at Trump's rally.
Yeah.
And Zoomers will also use the spread of information. Like I get a lot of news from TikTok too.
It's kind of like a form of like warfare, and it's kind of cool because it's like it's the little guy fighting back, which is what we need more of, you know.
Yeah. Well, because like I never really figured out how to use Reddit. That makes me sound super old. I just never figured it out.
Yeah.
And
I'm a lurker. I'm a Reddit lurker. I'm not a poster. I like never posted on Reddit.
and I know that like TikTok is literally like the bootleg Vine, but actually now TikTok has gotten really good about how it does content. And so I actually I can lose some time on TikTok. But Zoomers are really about TikTok.
Yeah.
They use it to they use it to make a difference in the world, and I think that's kind of interesting.
Well, I'd say a lot are. And just keep in mind too, as we're talking about these generations, we're trying not to generalize, but also keep in mind that just talking about generations in general is generalizing. Oh my god, that was a lot of generals.
I did so many generals. So one of the
G's.
they had Zoomers also had smartphones.
Uh-huh.
I remember I got my first cell phone when I was like I think 15 or 16, and I could just bet that Zoomers got them a little sooner.
Yeah.
Mainly because I knew how to use them. We had computers in the classroom that we utilized when I
Yeah.
was younger, but like computers are now a huge part of how schools work nowadays, and especially because of COVID.
Our first big social media platform, you basically had to know how to code to customize your page.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know.
And I did notice that Zoomers are not as great with computers as our generation was because of all of that.
Mm.
Like, they know how it works. They know how to do point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
They know how to follow a GUI.
Mm.
A graphical... Sorry, not a GUI, like a wizard.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like Zoomers are really much about the wizards. Like,
Yeah.
this is how you do this thing, and then that's how they do it, and then they just move on with their lives. So I've noticed that about them. When it comes to the political stuff, though, what was really interesting is that Zoomers actually had more of a voice than I thought they would.
Yeah.
Because millennials, like we said, were indifferent a little bit. And even though millennials came out in droves, I think that TikTok really helped with... And I keep using TikTok because it's such like the biggest thing of the Zoomer generation. It really is. Like, they really owned that space. But yeah, they're louder, I feel, than millennials tend to be.
I feel the same way. I think that there's like a tenacity to them that millennials don't have about certain things because we're so jaded.
Their work ethic is weird too, I've noticed.
Yeah.
It's weird in the sense that they want to be perfectionists, when millennials were like, we know we're not perfectionists and we don't want to be here.
Yeah, for real. For real. Yeah.
My favorite video on the internet back in the day was this thing about millennials in the workplace. And it was just a video where I remember the very last skit was like a millennial coming up there like, can I just like have the day off or whatever? I'm just like going through a lot right now. And the one was like, sure. And the next one came out and they're like, I'm really overwhelmed right now. And she's like, okay, you can go. And then the third girl was literally just making whiny noises like, and then she's like, okay, you can go. And I do remember the middle skit. They're like, she's like, Denise, can you schedule a meeting for 9 a.m.? And they're like, what time is that? They're like 9 a.m. Is that like 9 p.m.? And they're like 9:30. She's like, that sounds great.
Yeah, we don't like waking up early unless we're like trained to do it. But I feel like no one likes to wake up early though too. Yeah. So with millennials, there's an interesting thing. I don't really know what the statistic is for Gen Z, but did you know that we are the most educated generation but the poorest?
That would make sense because they crippled us with student loan debt. They didn't push us towards vocational schools. And then now they're trying to make college free, which is great. It is great. It's just also that now you have a whole because remember, millennials even had kids that were still millennials.
Yeah.
So you have a whole generation of people who are like dying under student loan debt because our parents didn't necessarily have to go to college or want to.
No.
But they pushed us all to go to college, and now we're just drowning in debt.
Yeah, and I'm about to dig that hole even deeper.
Yeah, I did with my master's program.
But it's what I feel like it's what I have to do. I mean, it's what I have to do what I want to love, to play by the system, which is rigged and shitty. what a millennial thing to say. But yeah, what are some things I guess that your mom has told you? So my parents, I believe, are Gen X, and your mom would be a boomer.
She's a boomer, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, she would have to be.
So what are some things that you've been told by, I guess, older generations, whether it's Gen X or boomers, like that are kind of what they feel are defining characteristics of millennials?
They saw us really as entitled.
Yeah.
Like, that was a very true statement. And because they worked really hard to give their kids everything,
Yeah.
the defining characteristics of boomers were they worked to live, or sorry, they lived to work, to make the world better for the next generation.
Yeah.
Millennials work to live. Millennials want to backpack through Europe and come back home and still be stable and have an apartment. Millennials want to live in a box if it means they're not tied down to their possessions specifically, so they can do whatever they want in the world. When the boomer generation was more about, I want my white picket fence, or I want my cute little studio apartment, or I want to be able to be stable, because the world was so unstable.
Yeah.
And so they wanted stability. And my mom even talked about how... like, even with millennials are very loud in the activist circles. They are not probably comparable to Zoomers. But boomers, on the other hand, yeah, they might have did all those marches and things like that, but they didn't have technology to make their messages expansive.
Yeah.
So we had technology to make it to where, like we said, like that quote from Coven about the whole, like, you could fart and post it online kind of BS. And it's true. So my mom made it sound like we were really entitled because we didn't know what a hard day's work looked like, and we didn't know what it was like to have to fight for equality. Now, which is interesting because now millennials and Zoomers are both fighting for gender equality at a really high level, and they're also fighting for racial equality at a really high level, opposed to, I feel like, the entire millennial generation did in their time.
Yeah.
Because of that entitlement, because of that comfortability. I feel like millennials do not like discomfort. I feel like Zoomers can thrive in discomfort.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with that. I feel like boomers maybe thought also that discomfort was, like, necessary in order to exist.
Oof, yes.
And I feel like we as millennials are like, we want change. We want things to change because that isn't how the system should be. I think we're really big on challenging tradition.
Yes. Millennials definitely
and
want to
same
challenge
with
traditions.
Gen Z as well.
Well, and then you have to remember that age-old quote about how millennials all date really terribly because they weren't, especially queer millennials, I mean,
Yeah.
date terribly because we weren't allowed to
Oh
date in
my
high
God.
school, but Zoomers are getting the chance to be able to date in high school.
Yeah, they are.
And so they
Yeah.
get to be a little bit... It's funny how when you talk to a Zoomer, they sound more emotionally mature when it
Than
comes to
millennials.
relationships.
Oh my God, for real though. And so many of us are alcoholics.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many of us
When
drink
you're
to cope.
forced into all that violence, and then you don't know what to do with your life. The thing, I think a lot of millennials turned to drinking because they tried to succeed, and it wasn't just given to them like everything else was.
Yeah.
And so they turned to drinking because of that, because of feeling like a consistent failure.
Oh,
And
ooh, my God. Why are you, like, reading my journal?
well, because it's true for me too. Like, I didn't really start thriving until I moved to Portland.
Yeah.
And that was probably the epitome of discomfort. And now that I live in Portland, it was trauma. It was trauma to move.
Yeah.
It caused a lot of discomfort, a lot of bad moments and stuff like that. But the outcome has been so great.
Yeah.
And I have gotten promotions at work. I have excelled in my drag, and it wouldn't have happened if I stayed in Colorado.
No.
And so it's the epitome of, I mean, that's probably why, I drink a little bit more now because of the social scene, but in Colorado, I would drink heavily.
Yeah.
Like, heavily, and always feel, oh my gosh, this reminds me of that conversation I think I said on the podcast once. I had a friend, her name was Kayla, who I went to college with, and she said, I said, do you ever feel, like, stuck here in Grand Junction? And what she said, if you want to live in Grand Junction and you went to school here, she's like, then you're succeeding. If you don't like Grand Junction and you still live here after college, it means you're a failure. It's what she said to me. And I was like, oh.
Oh, I feel that.
Oh, and I was like, dang.
I don't know why I stayed as long as I did.
I mean,
I don't,
circumstance really matters.
Yeah. I think mentally I wasn't in a place to move. I don't know. I would say that it's because I had to like sort out some demons, before, but that didn't really happen until I moved here. Yeah. I didn't start having the trauma nightmares until I moved here. It's like, and did you notice that like the majority of your dreams were like from Grand Junction when you were like, do you dream?
Yes.
Yeah. So did you notice that like the majority of them, are they still from Grand Junction?
Mm-hmm.
Same.
A good majority of them are.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it's a lot of life.
Majority of them.
It's a lot of life, but I've had a lot of life here,
Mm-hmm.
and I do know that emotional moments are seeping into my dreams, and
there were a lot of emotional moments there.
yes, and they seep into my dreams, and then I process that trauma on this podcast or on my Facebook. So
yeah,
party.
Yeah.
But back to the generational thing. I also kind of like, so I have a friend, we're going to see if we can get her on for this next episode.
Mm-hmm.
She does all the language, like we talked about lexicon, like all the language.
Yeah. I had to ask Gen Zer what no cap meant.
What does no cap mean?
I forgot. It still doesn't really make sense to me.
It still doesn't.
But it basically has something to do with like no lie, basically.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mine was simp.
I've heard that like cap or something means like a disguise or something. So like no cap means, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, something along those lines. Simp. Yeah.
Yeah, simp was one that they'd been using that I didn't really quite know what that meant.
Yeah.
Gosh, there was actually quite a few of them, like Zoomer slang that I was just like, what the hell are they talking about?
I'll say it how Sarah Paulson does. Period to T.
Period to T.
Period to T.
I can't actually do the accent well for saying period.
Period.
Like, it's not really my lexicon. And
period.
yeah, I say point blank period. That's what I say because I'm old and I get to say however I want to.
Yeah.
It's funny when I have these conversations, like
but the friend that you were talking about, yes.
Yeah, no, the friend that I'm talking about, I barely understand what she's talking about. Like, and the other Zoomer phrase was the "I can't fuck with you."
Oh yeah.
Or "I don't fuck with you." That one.
Is that? Yeah.
I didn't realize what that phrase actually meant. Really, when it first started coming out, like I was just like, why?
I think my favorite Zoomer phrase is "it's bussin'."
It's bus.
Is it bussin'? It's bussin'.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Zoomers are, gosh, and I like how they're just making songs famous because of TikTok. Like the songs like will be out and they'll be like, ooh, I like this for.
I'll download them. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I got into fucking Phoebe Bridgers because of TikTok. It's really crazy. I don't know. I think TikTok is a good platform to introduce new music. It's just not great for the artists because, sometimes artists don't get credit for their shit.
And often it's funny. I love the TikToks that I see where there's like always a woman who's like, she's like, hear this? She's like, you like it, right? And you've heard it in all those dance videos. And they're like, I made that. That's actually me.
Yeah, that's me. I'm just not getting paid for it, and I'm, not getting so much credit, even though I put on all this work to make something. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Artists kind of get screwed on TikTok, and people will flat out like rip people's videos on that platform and then claim them as their own, and they get away with it for a certain amount of time. It's fucked up.
Yeah, and people will steal concepts. I remember one of my favorite TikToks is this woman who's like, there's a door called Viral, and she's like original content, and it blocks her out. But somebody walks by that says unoriginal content, and they're let into the viral room. And then there's like another one that gets let into the viral room, and then somebody says, stealing her idea and using her sound gets let into the viral room, and she's still sitting on the ground. Yeah, I was like, that is comical.
Yeah.
Oh goodness, that's so funny.
Yeah.
But
there's great stuff on that platform.
Yeah, it's really great.
There's also not so great stuff.
kind of not a lot. There's kind of a lot of not great things on that platform.
There is. There's a lot of not problematic things about TikTok, honestly.
Yeah, and I also understand what I'm coming to realize is that Zoomers are having to deal with cancel culture at a really high level.
Oh yeah.
Like
I feel like I mean, and I we've always talked about how calling it cancel culture is like counterproductive, it's accountability. But yeah, in some ways it is kind of just like get her Jade, like fucking cancel culture. Like yeah. And it's rough because I feel like 2020, like that happened hardcore.
With keyboard warriors, especially because we were bored and we were all at home.
Ooh, yeah, 2020 was like the year of like cancellations.
Yeah, gosh, it seems like every time we turned around, like, so even in our community, like there's just the way that Zoomers are handling canceling is just so weird to me. They feel so justified. And there is no good. Here's a point, actually, that I think millennials do care more about the education, and Zoomers care more about the cancellation.
I think Zoomers / Gen Z just kind of has a chaotic energy about them.
Yeah, that would make more sense.
Which I think millennials are a bit more subdued.
Yes. Yeah, that probably fits.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of work to cancel somebody, and I know that, and yeah, I get that, like, it's a buzz term too, or buzzword too, but, like, because obviously, like, with that Camp on a Kiki stuff, how I was helping them through that, and I literally said to them, I was like, have none of you been canceled before? Like, what is this?
Never happened to you?
Gosh. Because being canceled as a millennial, before cancel culture was even a thing, gave you the skills necessary for the mental roadblocks you needed to put up to be able to deal with all of that.
Real.
And I feel like Zoomers are probably struggling with that because it's coming at them constantly, because a Zoomer can get viral success pretty effing quickly these days if they just play it
because
a
they're
little right.
Cool. Oh, speaking of, we haven't talked about this. Oh my god, and we're almost towards the end of our episode. Did you know that Zoomers have a new term for things that millennials do and other generations do that are out of style and out of touch?
Mm-mm.
It's called chug.
Chug?
Yeah. Chug, or like chuggy. Like, oh, that's really chuggy of you.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a really weird term.
Yeah. I saw some of the things, and one of the things was corded headphones.
That's funny.
Yeah. I also, there was a lot of stuff. Those lace choker necklaces that I love. That's chuggy.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So all sorts of different things, but they were like, yeah, they have a cringy term for like millennials. It's mostly millennials, and but other generations too.
You know, it's funny thing. Like, we talk about it because I'm gonna just sound like a grandpa right here.
Yeah.
The only reason so I hate cordless headphones so very much.
Yeah.
And the reason why is that my ears were always just shaped weird.
Yeah.
Like, they fall out. Like, if I just had pods, like, they'd fall out. They would absolutely fall out. And I've tried them, and they fall out. And guess what also happens? I will lose that mother effer like there is no tomorrow.
Yeah.
A tiny little thing. Please.
Whatever, chug. Make your excuses. No, just kidding. I'm the same way. I was using corded headphones today. So, but one good alternative to that is the over-the-head ones that are Bluetooth.
I do like those ones because those ones work really well.
Yeah.
But I did have some that, it's funny, I had Bluetooth ones that did wrap around my ear, and I used them at the gym, and they were beautiful.
Yeah.
But what would happen is they would just get unsynced every once in a while, and then I had to like reset them up, and I was just, it was a whole journey.
And sometimes they die.
Oh, and when they die, God, I hate when, because everything we have nowadays has to be plugged in. Like, my wallet has to be plugged in. My piss has to be plugged in. Like, it's just like a whole journey.
Wow.
Like, where you just need electronics.
TMI. I don't even know what that means.
Well, look it up. Goddamn boomer.
I know, I'm such a chug. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's funny. I really don't want to be like those millennials that like start like wars with like the other generation because they think we're cringy. I kind of know that we're cringy. You know what? I will still wear my skinny jeans, whatever. Like, and you enjoy the fashions that you do, and we'll just be out of touch Chugs, I guess.
And so will all of you listeners.
Yeah. I will just always be a product of my generation, okay?
Like what?
Gosh, leave us alone.
Leave us alone.
Go pick on the boomers some more.
Okay, boomers. So I guess that brings us to the end of our episode, listeners. This has been a really wild and fun journey.
Yeah, it has. And next week we're going to talk a little bit more, I think, about generations. And we want to have a guest on. So look forward to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
We'll see you next Thursday. Bye.
This has been another episode of A Gem of a Secret podcast. The hosts of A Gem of a Secret podcast are Donatella My Secrets and Coco Gem Holiday. You may follow Donatella My Secrets at Donatella_My Secrets on Instagram. You may follow Coco Gem Holiday at Coco Gem Holiday on Instagram. Original music by Touche Douche and Party Favors. You can follow them respectively at The Touche Douche and at Party Favors Music on Instagram. For more exclusive content, visit www.agemofasecretpodcast.com. That is AJEM of a secret podcast.com. Be sure to tune in every week on Thursday for a new episode wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have any comments or questions, email us at agemofasecretpod@gmail.com. Please don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe. Until next time, goodbye.